This is organized crime.
I don't know of a single person that recovered their money from a business email compromise attack.
The tactics are going to change.
In UK, last year, Taylor Swift concert, £1 million went into fake tickets.
That's incredible.
The scamming is a social engineering problem. It appeals to people's emotions.
We started the viruses and spam, and now we have everything.
So, hi, welcome back to our podcast. This is Berte, your host, IoT director for Bitdefender. I have three fantastic people here with me today. I'm going to start with Hadjy, Catalin, Cosoi, and Bogdan, Botezatu. And I'll let them each talk a little bit about themselves as we're going to dive in into our subject today for us. So Paul, tell us a couple of things about you. You have extensive background in cybersecurity and not limited to cybersecurity. You're a founder and CEO of a successful company. Take it to town.
Sure. I'm Paul Hadjy, VP of APAC and cybersecurity services here at Bitdefender. But prior to that, I was the CEO of a company called Hadjy. That was a cloud security company that focused on building a product that is now Bitdefenders by CSPM Plus. So joined Bitdefender formally a year and a half ago when Hadjy was acquired. And then, I've been happy here and now here in Bucharest, but normally I'm based in Singapore.
And you've also served in the military, did a couple of tours. And
I was never in the military, but it was in Afghanistan for a year. So spent a lot of time with Palantir when I worked there for 7 years in my youth, and was in Afghanistan for about a year and a half, in and out, but focus on interest.
Yeah, it's gonna be a couple of really good stories, I guess, which we probably won't be able to cover. But the subject, obviously, today is cyber fraud. So I'm sure there's some strings we can pull out of the stories that we're gonna discuss further. So you may have seen Catalin before, but I'll let him introduce himself as well.
Once again.
Once again.
Okay, so Catalin Cosoi, Chief Security Strategist for Bitdefender. Been with the company for the past 20 years. In August, it's gonna be like 21. So allowed to drink. And I've been doing many things within the organization, from R&D to communications to plenty of stuff. The main thing is that I was here witnessing how threats evolved in the past 20 years. So when we started the viruses and spam, and now we have everything.
And Bogdan is obviously another well-known face for Bitdefender. Probably needs no introduction, but hey, go for it.
Well, I'll do my best, right? I'm Bob, short for Bogdan, and I've been with the company for the past 17 years. I'm responsible for Bitdefender's vulnerability assessment program, among others, and I work with these great people in uncovering and reporting on the newest threats.
So cyber fraud is the topic of today's gathering here. So what do we understand by cyber fraud at Bitdefender? What is it that how does that stack up against an industry preoccupation? Let's say, what's our focus here? What's your particular focuses in your field?
Well, do we start?
Yeah, right. Let's.
Okay, cyber fraud. It takes many forms, many shapes. And probably one of the things that we need to make clear is where do we want to have this conversation? Maybe business, maybe consumer, maybe both.
Let's just take it as is and kind of lightly brush against the broader spaces, and then we can find some good examples of what people resonate with. So
okay, let's start with the businesses, because cyber fraud has been online for quite a while, right? And I guess that one cool story about it starts in Romania somewhere in 2016. One wrongly interpreted email leaked $45 million out of a company that's based in Romania, and that has been the target of business email compromise. So the thing is that a group of cyber criminals did their homework well. They investigated the company. They realized that the chief finance officer, the only person who could authorize a payment that large, was based in Romania. And they used this information to carefully target an email, apparently coming from the CEO. And the CEO advised the chief finance officer to make a wire transfer because they were on the verge of a merger and acquisition. So they had to clear the payment by the end of the day to make sure that they signed the deal. And the CFO at that time was not aware of cyber fraud or business email compromise. It was 2016. It's just a decade ago. But between now and then, there's been a world of development in the way cyber fraud works. So one wrong click, she opened the email. She noticed that the CEO was advising her to take action immediately. She didn't have any kind of security of prior security training, probably, and she made a payment. So people went away with $45 million, and that left a huge gap in the company's finances. They still have to recover from that loss at that time.
That's crazy. That's a really good story. So I'd imagine that a lot of it is the human factor, but there's also, you know, obviously tools that get employed by the actors. So let's talk a little bit about the realities of how you know, fraud happens. Like, what it's the, you know, the favorite avenues for the bad guys in the situation, and then we can maybe discuss a little bit about potential safeguards if you guys want to dive into that. Do you want to?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like I'm based in Asia mostly, so a lot of my context is revolving around that. But yeah, like in Asia, like business email compromise is kind of a big thing and happens quite a lot. But you also see a lot of fraud happening through WhatsApp as well, and other text messaging services. And I think that's been a sort of big area of interest for criminals. I often get WhatsApp impersonated, but also text from people that are pretending to be other people, and then sending me messages asking for things very similar to a business email compromise, but it's coming through other channels. I think that is the main channel of sort of fraud that's happening in Asia, especially because like a lot of the communication is done on those platforms instead of email. So we see that a lot. Yeah, generally, like it's that's most of it, but of course, like there's plenty of other sort of fraudulent things happening with like fake website phishing scams, like all these different things, sending people to the wrong place. But the vector that seems to be coming through more is definitely on the messaging services rather than email. Yeah.
So it sounds like obviously to support these endeavors, the medium, of course, where the attack gets carried out on is not always necessary as the you know, as the fraud or the attacks become more sophisticated, that they need to build a whole system of support for these things to happen, like you said, like websites, and make it as legitimate as possible, and just make it impossible for, you know, an average person to figure out, you know, that this is an actual threat, and ways for them to defend themselves. And I remember there was a time, I believe, over the last decade for sure, but there was a time when you know, some of the more initial attacks were you know, spoofing the CEO's email address and getting all these emails. And I've personally received emails like that, where, you know, the CEO is allegedly sending me an email saying, "Oh, you gotta send this money or buy these gift cards and stuff like that."
I need 20 scratch cards, right?
Yeah, no, really. And you'd be surprised. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised, but I'm sure some people would be surprised that people fall for this stuff, because you don't think about it twice. You know, you assume it's the legitimate person. You know, if it's the CEO, you don't want to disregard a potential a direct ask, and then you're just gonna act on it. You're not gonna think twice. Maybe the amount is not even that high. We're not, you know, I mean, that's a crazy happening, where it was $40 million.
Yeah,
you
you
think
basically strike jackpot when
a little more
that
due
happens.
deal on that one. But see, that was great. It was right at the time when they expected to make a large payment. But in general, day-to-day operation is like, okay, $2,000, not gonna be a big deal. I'll just get these things done for, and I'll respect, and then you learn. So, but I believe that since this happened over the last few years, there's a little more awareness. People kind of expect, or just look at it twice and be like, okay, maybe this is not legitimate. So I want to kind of work with you on understanding how it evolved over the last few years, and, you know, where we are currently. what's been done currently to try to defend? What's law enforcement doing? So maybe Catalin, if you want to join in on this.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of developments in the business email compromise phenomenon. So yeah, there's one thing that's like, spoofing or trying to pretend like the CFO or the CEO, doing all that stuff. And you would imagine that with enough education and all that kind of stuff, the employees would know what to expect and to prevent. But some of the things that I've noticed personally in terms of people coming to me saying, look, I had business email compromise, I lost 100,000, 200, 3,000, is that the phenomenon is like this. So company A and company B are doing business. Then they've been doing for years, right? They have a good level of trust. Everything goes smoothly. Company A buys products. The other one delivers and gets the money. At one point in time, one of these two organizations gets hacked. And the guy that has access within the organization starts reading the email, starts reading the correspondence, and just waits for the right moment. And at some point in time, when company A says, hey, I need to buy more products from company B, they'll send, okay, I need products worth of $200,000, right? Company B supposedly will send the invoice, and that's where the hacker comes in. He intercepts the email and modifies the account number. Or he just, if that's too complicated, he just sends an email saying, hi, I'm company B. I just wanted to tell you that we're working with a new bank. This is the new account number. Company A makes the payment and the money disappears.
So most of the time when the attack is carried out, there's not a lot of recourse, right? So a lot of this, a lot of them, let's assume it's money, but it could be others, goods as well. But let's say, so the money is usually not recovered, is it?
No, if you notice the fraud within, I think, 24 hours or 48 hours, you still have a chance. But if you're past that, the money is gone.
So when you say you have a chance, what does that entail? What's the process of potentially stopping, reverting?
You have to
transfer?
talk to the bank. The banks can revert their transactions if they're not thoroughly went through, right? So within, like I said, 48 hours, you can still talk to the bank and say, okay, I'm going to stop the transaction. It will not reach. If the transaction went through completely, the money from the receiving account would already be transferred to another account and so on. And there's a lot of people saying, but when I do a transaction, I have to carefully write there the name, the recipient, the IBAN, everything, all this stuff. And I just send it to an account with the name of a different account, with a different company. And yes, banks do that because in the internet scheme of things, the money just flows from here to there. So once you go to the bank, it's like, well, the money was transferred. If you go to the other bank, sorry, the money was transferred. And they carefully do this a few times in going to countries, and then you have all these money mules. So the money is lost forever. And I don't know of a single person that recovered their money from a business email compromise attack. And this, because it works so well, I was talking to some guys at Interpol a while back, maybe quite 2016, right? And we were discussing like, hey, Catalin, what do you think is the biggest threat right now? And from my perspective, from the private sector perspective, we're like ransomware, extortion in terms of data exfiltrated that you put for sale. And they were like, no, according to the complaints we get, it's actually business email compromise, right? So the level of perspective, the way we had the visibility on, the telemetry of things, business email compromise was already a big thing. And while we were looking at ransomware and other types of scams. But now, if I would have that conversation again, business email compromise would be number 3. Number 2 would be ransomware. Number 1 would be romance and investment scams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I was mentioning that we have different perspectives based on what we're targeting, consumer audiences or businesses. One thing that crossed my mind when I heard you talk, Catalin, was there's been a nice twist in the business email compromise stuff. Normally, business email compromise is not always ending up with compromise of email. Right? It's use of an email that implies authority. Like, well, maybe my CEO doesn't have the email compromise to send an official email, but that email field can be spoofed, and that's where that's where most attacks start. They don't control the CEO's email address, but they spoof it as if it were real. We noticed that in a couple of interactions with people who we helped recover from ransomware attacks, they were following up via email maybe years after that, keeping the same thread that we opened before and asking us for like weird stuff, transferring money, helping them remotely access the system and so on. And we were like, what's going on? Are they being hacked maybe again? And the thing was that sometimes during the infection, cyber criminals left with their archive, their email archive, and they're using past conversations to start up new discussions with previous persons that they apparently had a trust relationship with.
So it makes it all legitimate all of a sudden. And
If your
it's like,
CEO has been compromised by malware at some point, maybe cyber criminals didn't take the opportunity to do business email compromise right there. But they still have access to the email conversations, and they're replying threats that happened in the past to re-engage with potential victims. So that's some sort of social engineering taken to the next level, because the email now comes from your CEO. It comes in a thread that was between you and the CEO, so it must be legit, right? Transferring a huge amount of money doesn't sound that outrageous as if it came out of the blue.
exactly. And what's more insidious, my understanding, of course, as a sideline, I'm standing on the sideline looking at this, is just that how hard it is to discover that you're actually being gamed on, just because it's such a simple and efficient, effective way to get to a person and get to enable them to do something they normally shouldn't do, right? It's and this is because we would have a conversation, even though we're cybersecurity professionals. We're like, oh yeah, we know what to do. We got the tools, we got the education. We're not going to get, but this is something that can happen to even the best of us, right? So it's one of those things that can really happen to anybody.
No, that's false. That's false.
Right?
I can give you an example for which you would fall immediately. Okay, so you're like Taylor Swift, right? Okay, she's gonna.
Big fan.
Yeah, so you're in Bucharest and Taylor Swift is gonna come to Bucharest. So we're like, okay, let's get the ticket. You receive an Instagram ad. Taylor Swift tickets, 200 euros. Buy now. It's Instagram. It's probably verified,
Legit,
right?
right?
Right? It's legit. You go in. There's a website. You go on the website. Looks perfectly legit. Absolutely no problem. You make the payment. You carefully choose your seat in front of the. Hey, Taylor. And then you buy the ticket. You receive the ticket. And then the day of the concert comes. You go with the ticket, and they're like, no, denied. You go on the website. The website is no longer there. How would you do that? How would you protect yourself?
Right. So fortunately that's, not a big, hopefully big ding on but it could be a $2,000 ticket. Like,
in UK last year, Taylor Swift concert, £1 million went into fake tickets.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I can imagine the unfortunate people that showed up at the concert just not. So, and then again, you mentioned the Loverboy type of scam, right? So walk me through those. What happens? What's the point of all those messages that all of us receive? Hello, or about that dinner tomorrow. Whatever, that seem very legit, like it's some sort of a friend, but then they pretend they're, I made a mistake, but hey, we're friends now, so let's talk about what's going on there. A lot of people want to know. So what's the story with that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I haven't.
I let Paul talk because this kind of fraud is big in Asia. Like it's either targeting Asia or originating from Asia.
And I'm going to interject in the sense that I know that, for example, WhatsApp is a huge platform there in other parts of the world. US is WhatsApp is less prevalent, so this happens over text, but the mechanism is the same. So
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think it does happen a lot, like the lover boy or lover girl scams, where people are targeting individuals, reaching out to them through whatever platform, connecting with them, and having historic conversations with them over long periods of time in many cases. And then eventually asking them for an investment, asking them for some sort of financial sort of gain, and then they're gone, or they keep getting it, right? I think that also happens where like multiple payments are sent, the conversation and everything continues. It happens where celebrities are spoofed. So a lot of local celebrities in Asia often have fake Instagram accounts. I'm sure this happens in the U.S. as well, but have fake Instagram accounts set up. Then like connect with people, get their WhatsApp, start communicating with them through them, and then eventually that kind of moves into asking for some sort of financial gain.
It sounds like a pretty involved operation, though. It seems like somebody's behind these messages. That have, you have to get engaged. But now with AI, it just makes it so much easier, right?
It's not just that. It's not just a guy or a group of guys doing it. It's entire organizations that do it.
Right.
And these organizations actually work together, but they interact with you at different levels. So, for instance, okay, you get the first touch base where they start to interact with you, and
How does that happen? So how do they get, they just get a pool of random numbers? Do they know it's an active number? Do they know who's associated with it? Or do they build a database after that? How does it work?
there's many ways, but usually there's not a single group. There's a group that actually is responsible to gathering the contacts, and they don't carry the fraud afterwards. They sell this data to the next organization, which will start to do this with you. And some of them will focus on, okay, so I'm going to extort this person either through a love scheme or an investment scheme. But there will be other groups like, okay, I have access to this individual who works for company A. I'm actually targeting the organization, not the individual. The individual will be my way in. And once things progress, for instance, I know there's the third option, the third variant where, okay, you've been extorted, or you willingly invested something that never came back. You realize what happened, and you would like to get your money back, right? You go to the police. Police can help you. They'll start an investigation, but that doesn't mean you get your money back. But then third organization reaches out like, hey, we can help you get the money back for a small fee. You pay that fee, no money is coming back. And they sell these contacts one to another, right? So it's an entire ecosystem, criminal ecosystem.
I'm getting scammed again.
Yeah. So it's targeting. So the same types of scam are targeting both consumers and enterprises, right? The person is just the way in, right? Depending on where they want to go.
So sometimes cybercriminals leverage the fact that phone numbers are incremental, right? You just add one and get a new number and a new number and a new number up until you deplete
And of course,
the pool of numbers.
Generally in most countries the geographic location of those people just by the
you know how phone numbers are being
work,
created,
right?
because they have prefixes.
So you have
and,
some
yeah.
Sometimes you can also find the name.
That's where I'm going to get. Sometimes you're being inclined into replying just for fun, see where the scam goes. That's wrong, because most of the social instant messaging platforms that you are engaged on usually withhold information until you reply. So maybe your avatar will not be displayed on the conversation until you reply. And hackers at the other end only have a phone number that could be in use or could not be allocated to anybody. They have one touch point, right? When you reply, you already are disclosing that a phone number is in use and it's operated by a human, and probably you're going to show their avatar. Maybe it's a photo of you that can be reverse looked up into a search engine, and all of a sudden they also have your social profile, probably the name, probably the organization that you're working for, if your social profiles are linking to LinkedIn, for instance, or the different other resources. And at this point, they have an entire spreadsheet with your information, who your family is, what kind of education you have, or what kind of security skills you have, right? Based on the intelligence that they can gather from the open. And that information can be used against you directly, or can be sold to somebody who's skilled at a specific type of fraud. And one thing that I wanted to discuss about here, and this is important, sometimes it's not the financial damage that's affecting people the most. Bitdefender has been working with a number of organizations and journalists in investigating types of fraud. Journalists reach out to us and ask us to review conversations, review images that were being exchanged between the victim and the scammer, and so on. And we got to interview victims, and they were like, you know what, I lost $130,000, and I don't care about the money. I can make money again, but I'm not waking up to my girl texting good morning, right? And the psychological damage sometimes surpasses the financial one.
It's incredible. So what I'm gathering is, ideally, if you get a text that from a number you don't know, asking something that's benign, you're unrelated to the subject, but you don't even, like, the whole point is just don't reply at all. Don't say stop, don't say anything, just don't reply.
Report it and block it.
Report it and block it, okay. So it's kind of a grim picture, to be honest. It sounds like really scary. A lot of the stuff happens, everybody gets under the wheels of this. But what's the industry doing to prevent this, to diminish the scale? What are we doing to prevent this? What's law enforcement? Is there a positive finale to all this, or is it? What's your take on this, Paul?
Yeah. I think, like, in what I see a lot in Asia is like education, right? So not only from companies like us, but also from governments. Like in Singapore, there's ads all over the bus stop and train and everything that are basically telling you, like, exactly what Bob just said, right? Like, don't reply, block it, spam, report it. And there's, like, even set up organizations where you can report this stuff that are, like, separate from the police, but gather all the data, do analysis, and work with the police to try to solve, or at least prohibit some of these things from happening. So yeah, I think, like, education is, like, one key thing that a lot of governments, companies are doing to kind of help reduce it. But of course, like, tactics change. There's always a human on the other end of this, at least for now. So I think they're going to change the tactics, and the training and everything will have to be continually updated for people to do it. I'll let Bob and Catalin talk a bit about the technical measures and Bitdefender side of things.
Just for example, I know that there's a whole war against disabling the numbers that are in use, right? There's this whole, like, organizations and the carriers that are working to cancel access to these actors to send these messages out, but that's a cat and mouse game, because there's always another way. And I know there's certain geographies where these measures are more successful than others. Here in Europe is probably, I don't have the exact stats, but I believe in Asia they're a little more aggressive on blocking this. So yeah, countermeasures would
Catalin pointed out something great in this discussion: the fact that this is organized crime, and it's highly organized crime. It's not one dude somewhere in a basement doing all the scamming. It's an entire organization that works to create assets that the scammers will engage people with. There's people translating messages. There's people building social profiles. There's people building fake pages and applications for crypto investment scams and so on. There's call centers running for these cyber criminal people. There's guys buying and selling personal information to make the con look legit, and there's people who are using advanced techniques for money muling. The money needs to be laundered somehow. So one thing that is becoming clearer to us is that these organizations are moving very fast. You said blocking numbers. Sure, it works, but there's an infinite supply of numbers. Most scamming organizations are using call centers who have access to, I'm not gonna say an infinite pool of numbers, but a huge chunk of numbers.
And also, let's tell our
actively
audience
spoof stuff.
exactly, and they use VoIP. So the people listening, don't imagine there's 10 phones on the table with 10 SIMs. No, happens using VoIP.
Voice over IP technologies
So the software, everything is at scale.
that
It's
come
just
with-
broadcast at large scale.
Yeah, they come with built-in protocols that allow you to spoof numbers, right? A call center in India doing business for brand A will always be capable of impersonating brand A's phone call because it has a legitimate reason to do so. Cybercriminals are using the same technology to illegitimately spoof these numbers. So with dealing with organized crime, they move very fast. They have tactics in place to replenish malicious pages where you're getting phished, or impersonating web logins for bank services and so on, because they have the proper infrastructure to do so. And technology is the only barrier that that helps, apart aside from education, which is also important. But and one thing that I'd like to discuss about is the fact that it's becoming more and more important for cybersecurity solutions to be able to correlate information from one device that you own to another one. Most of the time, scams start on mobile phones. People are approached via short messages or instant messages or whatever, but they're slowly being migrated towards laptops or desktop devices where they do banking from. So it's very important to be able to correlate the fact that you have had a couple of conversations in the past with unknown people, and all of a sudden you're plugging your phone into your computer and installing remote access software on the computer. The security solution should be able to tell that a scam that started on a mobile device is going dangerously close to e-banking compromise, for instance. So technology will play an increasingly crucial role in fighting off a multi-billion-dollar type of fraud.
And what's law enforcement doing for this or about this?
I think they have enough complaints on the
They're
table,
taking
so-
complaints up until now.
They're taking. No, I mean, I've been reading about the many call centers being taken down, and investigating. And there are call centers where people aren't really sure that what they're doing is fraud or not. They think it's legit what they're doing. There are other call centers that they know exactly what's going on. I even once heard about the employees of such a call center that when they were recruited, they also had to pass a lie detector test. So they weren't undercover cops or things like that. So they were verifying the background of these people before actually asking them to commit fraud. And this is a multi-billion-dollar business, so it's obviously that they're very, very well organized. And with the rise of AI, and I'm not going to go into you draft beautiful phishing emails and so on. With the rise of AI, now they can impersonate the voice as well. So basically, they'll call the CEO, CFO, whatever, and they ask random questions like, "Hey, can you say if you like blue?" Yes. Okay. So this is how yes sounds. Various questions, having some conversations throughout the time, which can be, as legit as possible, so nothing out of the ordinary. And then they, impersonating that voice, they call somebody else from the organization saying, "Hey, this is the CEO. This is my wife's number, so that's why I'm calling." You had that conversation before. You recognize the voice, right? You know the person. "Hey, I need you to do this and that," and so on. And you're like, "Yeah, I mean, I talked to the guy. That's his voice. So you're gonna do the CEO fraud on the phone. So not even a text message, right?"
And this can look completely legitimate, but at the same time, collecting this information can be done fully automatically. It's not.
So to your point, or to address your question, law enforcement is doing a lot, but as I mentioned earlier, this is the number one threat, so to speak, right now. So it's more than ransomware and so
Yeah,
on.
no, I mean, it's obviously a cat and mouse game, just like any other, issues that we face in the industry. But what I'm trying to get out is, kind of the consensus. We know the issue. We know the tactics. We're aware. We're familiar with the stuff. But I think for a broader audience, it might not be clear, what's being done or what the status of the situation is. So that's why
There's one point I want to add too. Like I think in Asia, what's becoming common, you'll see this a lot in the media, is where people are actually like getting false job ads. They travel to a specific location and then they're forced to work at some of these spam centers as well. So they're essentially kidnapped by receiving a job offer, going to the country where they've been advertised this job offer that obviously pays well, get there, and then are forced to work in these places for years.
Just basically, they take the paperwork, the passports, whatever, and they just like they're stuck doing this whatever crazy work for no money or little money at all, or it's basically slavery of sorts.
Yeah, and they're targeting people in like different countries because of language capabilities as well. So they want people from that country to come with the specific language capabilities and force them to do this work.
And it's interesting, like you said, and in many parts of Asia, the education aspect of it is solid in the sense that you mentioned like bus ads and stuff like that. I've never seen that in San Francisco, so I know that they're handled differently in different parts, and it kind of, maybe, I don't know if it addresses the prevalence of the attacks or they're just taken seriously or by the organizations. But to this, I want to ask you guys if you have some information about, where is this something that's geography locked, or is it just as global as it gets? Where are these bad actors located mostly? Do we have any information on this? Like where does this whole...
I know some, mostly in the Asian context, but I think like it happens a lot in Cambodia specifically. I think people are asked to come there, whether like depends on who the organization is targeting, right? But it happens to a lot of Chinese people. They travel there, subsequently can't go back and are forced to do this. Obviously, China has a big market with billion plus people, so if you can target them with one language, like it helps. Obviously, there's also multiple different dialects as well, so they can even target specific dialects, and they're targeting specific parts of the population too, right? So older people. So I think that is happening there, and obviously in Singapore, most people also speak Chinese as well. So a lot of the attacks come that way. I personally, during COVID, I think one of the best ones I've seen was in that period, the Ministry of Health in Singapore would call you and text you if you were in an area with someone who also got COVID.
Right.
But they were doing fake calls like that, basically like pretending to be the government, that you were notified COVID, please contact us, and then they ask for payments, right? For supplies or whatever that you never get, right? So I think those types of things are really sophisticated, like we talked about before, like taking on the times. But yeah, from what I've seen, Cambodia seems to be the one that is most common. But also happens, I think, like in Myanmar or Thailand, generally where I think they feel like they're safer is where they do it from. Especially the bigger ones, the more sophisticated ones.
Because it can go from, something as innocuous as, paying for COVID supplies, like like, hey, send us $20 for a test or something like that, all the way to fully getting drawn into a whole different country, taking your paperwork taken away from you and doing slavery for however long, and there's just no way out of, because it's a country that doesn't really have any protections against it. So it's that crazy of a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
All right. So these guys can have operations in other countries as well, right? They could be in the US or Europe or other countries. It doesn't have to be Asia as well, does it? Or
No, it can be anywhere. The most important factor is actually the language. So
For specific types of scams. If
exactly.
they're using voice calling, for instance, they need to impersonate a person that's speaking a specific language, then it's a little bit more difficult to operate this kind of scams from Asia, right? But if you're approaching people via short messages to make them fall in love with you, English would be just fine. AI-based translation would work. So there's no language barrier. We know that a while ago, Romania was massively hit by a very complicated type of scam. It started with AI-generated videos of prime ministers, celebrities in Romania, well-known persons that were advertising stock investment, stock options. So thing was that you were being presented a video ad with a Romanian prime minister telling you that there's a loophole in the way the economy works, and if you invest $20, you'll receive $2,000 and so on. And yeah, politicians lie, right? But this time it was the AI who was dubbing in the video. So thing is that the scheme ended up on it started via video sharing platforms. It took people to a newspaper page that included the video and instructions about how to proceed forward, and then you were dispatched to calling a phone number. At the other end was a call center with people speaking Romanian. They were not based in Romania. They were based in a nearby country called the Republic of Moldavia. Incidentally, we speak the same language, so it was easy for cyber criminals to run this scam. And from there, people were applying sales pressure tactics to victims to convince them into investing into this scheme. Of course, there was a huge operation. Money was lost. The police got caught in this investigation, and eventually they dismantled the call center. But this story proves that there's a specific language barrier when it comes to scamming people with specific types of threats. But when it comes to texting, then the world is your oyster. There's no geographic restrictions.
Because, for example, in particular in the United States, there's things that are in the United States. There's things that are very particular compared to other parts of the world. So, for example, in Europe, most of people, in general, credit cards are less prevalent than the United States. For example, in payments have been more secure with 3D secure when doing payments online compared to the US. In the US, it's just generally easier to make payments with credit cards. Everybody has a credit card. There's no PIN to a credit card in the US, so it's just easier to get access to those things. And then even further down, there's the reality of the social security number, which is the individual number associated with every resident in the United States, which grants anybody access to a host of things related to that person. It can, accounts can be opened on the person in the person's name just by having that. I believe it's a 9-digit number, right? So that, and then what else that's interesting? I find it interesting. One of my craziest finds was that I don't know if you know, you can if you know a couple of things about a person. You can find out the amount and the type of cars they have just completely openly in the US. So, for example, let's say I want to know what kind of cars Paul has if he's a US resident. So I'm just going to go on an insurance website that insures, one of the many insurers. So if I know his name, I know his birthday, and maybe I know an address, which is usually easy to Google and figure out. I can go to any insurance company website and say, hey, I want to insure, my car. And then the insurance, there's two options. You might land up on the actual company that insures the person and says, oh, you already have a policy. But then you can go to a competitor and put in the same information. And they're going to list your vehicles and ask you, hey, which one do you want to insure? So if you were trying to, I don't know, like arrange a heist, it's completely easy to figure out. There's ways to find out somebody has a nice expensive car somewhere that you didn't know about because it's not public. So this kind of access to information, I'm just making a case that it's so easy to find access and to get access to this kind of sensitive information, and it's almost impossible to fence it off. So I think where I'm going with this is I'm trying to figure out if that beyond education, beyond just being in the know, what other things can either a business or a person do to fence off a potential?
There's very few things that you can do to completely stay safe, and that's because there's this what we call data fallout. There's data breaches that happened in the past to various companies, and cyber criminals have been exchanging that information for free up until the point where there's a huge file available on the internet that's called the combinations of mega breaches, which includes pretty much everything known about every person alive on this planet. the phone numbers, medical records, what types of cars you're driving, web searches, profiling information from marketing agencies. Everything is available for free. So unless you have recently changed
Again, available for
for the
free.
free, yes, you can download it as a torrent file, provided that you have somewhat north of 600 gigabytes of space, right? That's pretty much the Wikipedia of data theft. Thing is that you can use information there to accurately profile and reach out to anybody. They have phone addresses, email addresses, specific interests. You can. It's already filtered and vetted because cybercriminals have been using it for so long. Some information has changed inside. Maybe your credit cards had expired. You have renewed them. You have canceled a couple of them that were exposed to cyber fraud and so on. But you don't change the immutable part of your life: your social security numbers, your date of birth, your address. Right?
Yeah.
That's
You can change your name, you can change your address, you can change your credit card numbers. Heck, you can even change your gender potentially, but social security number and date of birth are gonna be sticking there.
Yeah, and funny thing is that as we're exploring new avenues of interacting with technology, we are slowly going towards the moment where our biological data, like DNA, will be exposed. So cancel that.
Yeah, it's a topic I would love to explore with you guys right now and postulate about it. I know there's we have some interesting theories on that one, and we might brush over it. But yeah, so it seems like this is again one of those things where it's a huge industry, top numbers on worldwide attacks. Not much that can actually be done in it's not a software anybody can just download and stay safe, right? To do so. So it's just a whole industry is trying to protect and educate and make it. Have you seen over the years? Have you seen education change anything, or is it that there's such a huge market that we have just crossed the chasm, and there's still enough people out there to be scammed, and fraud is rampant that we're not really seeing improvement. What's our projection looking forward?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think continued investment in education is going to be necessary just because, like, again, like, I think the tactics are going to change, right? Based upon, like, how successful or not successful the attackers are, they're going to move to new different types of ways to attack people. And I think people just need to be more aware of those tactics and procedures because sometimes they can be really good, as I think both Catalin and Bob pointed out earlier. Yeah, just making people aware is going to be an essential part, in my view, of the future, of the different types and procedures. Obviously, like, I think most people know there's fraud happening, and they are a target, but the way that they can be attacked, I think that's always going to be changing and something that people will need to know about. And just like, people always read the newspaper, at least historically. Now we're reading web pages, but like, we're going to have to read about security because otherwise, like, you will be susceptible to new targets. And luckily, we're in the industry, but for those that aren't, I think it's a good practice to just, like, be aware, read, find a blog you like, and just read about the new types of attacks or and things like that. Because, like, I do believe they will become more sophisticated, and not everyone will be immune. And I think that's my advice.
And would you say that, compared to, for example, ransomware, this is potentially more insidious because in most cases, or in a lot of cases, for ransomware, decryptors are made available and maybe the situation can be mitigated.
I don't
Would you
know if
say
that's
this
the
is
best mitigation strategy, but
My take here is
no,
that
of course, yeah, and we could expand on that. But what I'm, once the activity has been carried through, there's not much you can do. But would you say this is more insidious that way, or would you rank it?
ransomware is a technical problem.
Yeah.
Scamming is a social engineering problem. It appeals to people's emotions. It plays with them, and it uses these emotions to force people to take action. It's striking fear into somebody. When you get a phone call from a kid who tells you that they've been involved into an accident, you don't get to think twice about sending money. You're just naturally reacting to a stimulus. It's not something that you can block because it stems from what we are as human beings. I grew up with Kevin Mitnick's stories. Probably that's what made me choose this cybersecurity path. So one thing that I learned from Kevin was that you can work your way into everybody's heart. Provided that you know what buttons to push, they will gladly comply to your request, no matter how outrageous these are. So scammers know that, and they are applying good social and psychological tactics to lure you into working for them. Secondly, there's this issue. XKCD has this great comic, the 10,000s, right? 10,000 people discover every day what happens when you put Mentos into Coke, right? On an analogy is like 10,000 people discover the internet for the first time every single day, right? They haven't been exposed to the Nigerian prince. They haven't been exposed to romance scam. They haven't been exposed to malware. They have no idea what the internet is. Like they go online for the first time and imagine the emotion, and yeah, they suddenly become available to pretty much anybody because there's no geographic barriers. Everybody can get into contact with them and attempt a scam for the first time. They will fall for that. It's kids, it's seniors, it's the vulnerable people who haven't regarded the internet as a potentially hostile environment up until now. So it's easy for scammers. We're doing most of the work for them, right, as human beings.
And they all accept the cookies.
That is true. Paul, with your experience in incident response and in pen testing, I just want to ask you before we wrap up a couple of things for all of you. Actually, what's that one thing that keeps you up at night? What's the your focus in all things cybersecurity? What's driving you to?
I think like there's a lot of mitigation strategies. I still run into organizations that don't have 2FA on, like individuals as well, and like that's the easiest thing I think you can do to reduce your risk significantly, and it's free. It does obviously takes a bit more time, and you have to like put in authenticators everywhere, but like I think that reduces your risk like a lot. And we see like so many of the incident response things. I mean, most of my incident response sort of work was a while ago, but a lot of it was coming just from that, like people not having 2FA in their cloud environments, in not having like even process 2FA, right? Of like to help with business more compromise of like, hey, if someone asks you to send a $45 million payment, you're like, just call the guy first, right? Like find some medium that you've already communicated with them to ensure, or maybe in person is worth that type of payments, right? But like organizations still don't have those processes set up. So yeah, I think like most of the stuff that we investigated was like around that. What keeps me up at night is like not that stuff, because like I think like it's somewhat avoidable, or at least like there's a lot of good mitigation strategies to make it much harder to do it. And then I think that old adage of you don't have to run faster than the bear, you just have to run faster than the guy next to you comes into play. But with nation state actors, I think like that's like a totally different game, right? And that's like where I think the response capability comes in, of like being able to understand what's happening, quickly mitigate it as fast as possible. And I think as the organizations get bigger, that becomes a more important part of the strategy. And that's what scares me, is the nation state stuff, because I feel like I wouldn't say it's fully preventable. I think exactly. You have to have a mitigation, like a response plan in place.
Gotcha. Right. What's I'd like to hear Bob on this as well, because I know he's always
Awake.
no, he's definitely always awake. No, but he always has the latest at heart. But at the same time, he's to me actually, because I know I talk to and I work with Bob a lot, and to me he's one of those canaries in the coal mine when something pops up, and it's one of my favorite people to talk to and learn about things. So I mean, I'm gonna ask you the same thing. What do you think? What keeps you up at night about a matter?
I've been working with Catalin and the rest of the research team in Bitdefender on a couple of very strong cases in the past. Like what keeps me up at night probably is the amount of responsibility that we have towards our customers. Quick example was when we were solving for a couple of ransomware cases, and it was the Christmas Eve in 2018 when we got approached by an utility company that had been hacked by ransomware, and they weren't able to start pumping water because their billing system was offline, and they had to cease operation not to generate losses. And you know, we worked for maybe 13 hours straight, remoting into the company and trying to fix corner cases generated by ransomware, because we were risking that people wouldn't have running water in on a Christmas Eve. And that was like, you know, our mission then was to get things up and running for people to start enjoying the modern parts of the life, right? And that's just one of the many cases. We've been involved in fixing ransomware at healthcare facilities that couldn't admit patients. We had to recover information for various people who were affected by the loss of those of that information. And that puts tremendous pressure on you as a private person, but also offers that rewarding feeling that you're actually contributing to something.
And I agree, and I thank you for all of this. I know it's a black hole of information and subjects that
You probably were expecting like, what's keeping you at night, death threats or something like that. It didn't happen.
yeah, no, I definitely hope that's not on the table. And in fact, you know, I recognize that a lot of, in fact, every cybersecurity professional is a force for good, at least in my opinion, and I know the whole community works towards making the world a better place for businesses and consumers alike. And the whole point of this is, you know, trying to, you know, reduce the damage or dispel the damage that people and organizations face. And, you know, I obviously fully support the endeavors. I'd like to thank you guys for contributing to this. I know we can talk a lot more about them. I hope that we get some, you know, maybe if there's feedback or, you know, if there's ideas on what we should, you know, dive in deeper on a next episode, I'd love to hear that so we can, you know, discuss those. But I think we kind of walked through a bunch of scenarios that are common, that people run into, you know, currently, have some understanding of how these things work. We have some sort of, you know, ideas on how to at least be smart about things and be aware. You know, obviously, just make another phone call, you know, doubt things before you act. But you know, and generally just get more educated and to make things more preventable. Again, I thank you very much for contributing. I think this was super useful and educational, and we will see you on the next one. So this was Dan, this was Paul, Catalin, and Bob. Thank you. I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Stay safe.
Yeah, thank you.